Good morning.
Morning.
That's a pretty good morning. How about let's try one more time. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Advancing AI 2026. It's so great to be back here in San Francisco and to see so many friends and partners and customers, and especially all the developers that are here with us today. And I want to say a big welcome to everyone who's joining us online from around the world. This is my absolute favorite event of the year. It's where we bring the entire AI ecosystem together to show what we've been building and where we're going next. And this year, this is our biggest show ever because we have so much to tell you. So let's go ahead and get started. At AMD, our mission is to push the boundaries of high performance in AI computing to help solve the world's most important challenges. And I often say AI is the most important technology of the last 50 years. And frankly, the progress that we're seeing in the industry is just incredible. Like every month, every few months, we see something new that was far beyond our imagination. And you can already see the impact across every industry. In healthcare, AI is helping researchers identify new drug candidates faster. In science, we're solving problems that we didn't think were possible a few years ago. And across every industry, AI is changing the way we get work done. And the most important thing is we're still in the very, very early innings of what's possible. Now, just take a look at some of these charts. We look at these every year, and you kind of see the rate and pace of AI growth. A couple of years ago, we were just starting. People were experimenting with chatbots, and it was really cool. But if you look at today, we're really seeing more than 35 quadrillion tokens consumed every single month. That's an increase of nearly 160 times in just 2 years. And that curve is actually just getting steeper. You're going to hear a lot about that today. So just looking at, where's all that demand? I mean, obviously, training remains incredibly important and foundational. And over the last 4 or 5 years, we see the compute that's used for training advanced models continuing to increase by, let's call it, roughly 5x every year. And those models are getting better. Like, we're all experiencing that. We're seeing better reasoning. We're seeing new capabilities. We're now seeing a growing number of specialized models. And one of the things that I really believe in is there is no one perfect model. I think we're all going to use a slew of different models, depending on what task you're trying to solve and which industry you're in. But the bigger shift is actually in inference. And we expected this. We expected that inference would grow faster than training. And we can say that in 2026, for the first time, the world is using more AI compute to run models than to train them. And we've seen that to a point where we think this year, roughly 60% of the global AI compute capacity will be used for inference. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. As billions of people every day use AI, the workload shifts from building models to putting them to work. And actually, we're going to talk a lot today about agentic AI, and that's accelerating the shift even faster. So if you think about all of this, we see agents as the next big step for AI. And the most interesting thing is, this is really just started accelerating over the last, I would say, 5 or 6 months this year. So when we started with LLMs, they were great to answer questions, but we found that to really get the power of AI, you want agents to be able to really answer full questions. So you give it a goal, it keeps working until it solves the problem. And what that means for us in the compute industry, it means that compute demand is growing at an incredible pace. We're actually seeing a step change in compute demand. Because when you ask the agent to do something, it actually has dozens of steps, and it has to reason, and it has to call tools, and it has to access data, and it has to keep doing it over and over until it solved the problem. And so you need lots of GPUs to do all that reasoning. But importantly, you also need a lot of CPUs to orchestrate every step around it. So when you look at just what that means from a market standpoint, it's really hard to put this market data up because I feel like every few months we're changing, sort of the perspective based on what our customers are saying. But what we're seeing is that the shift to agentic AI is certainly growing the AI accelerator market very significantly. It was actually last year at this event that we called the AI accelerator market at about $500 billion by 2028. And at that time, it actually felt like a very big number. Didn't you think it was a big number? But honestly, you look at it today and it looks conservative because the AI demand is just continuing to accelerate. And you can see it, right? Better models, more usage requires more compute, and more compute actually builds better models. And so we're now expecting that by 2030, the AI accelerator market is going to reach about 1.4 trillion by 2030. So what do you think about that? Is that a big number? I mean, what that means is by the end of the decade, the AI accelerator market is going to approach the size of the entire semiconductor market today. And although there will be many different types of accelerators, I'm a big believer in there's no one size fits all as it comes to chips. We do expect that GPUs are going to make up the vast majority of that market because the algorithms are still very much in their infancy and we're still continuing to see the workloads change. And that favors programmability in the overall silicon ecosystem. Now, perhaps the most interesting part of the last 6 months has been, GPUs are only part of this story. What we're actually seeing is agentic AI is creating an entirely new growth vector for server CPUs. Now, I've updated this number a lot also over the last 6 to 8 months. But look, we call it like we see it. And we were early. I mean, we saw from our largest hyperscale customers, and you're going to see some of them here today, who said, look, as AI inference is going up, we need more server CPUs. And so we saw growth in the server CPU market. And we said, last year we thought it might grow, let's call it 18 to 20% CAGR to an overall market size of 60 billion. But frankly, what we're seeing is that the rate and pace of agentic AI adoption is much, much faster than any of us thought. So we're talking about agents going from millions to billions. Like we're able to increase all of our productivity, and that requires a tremendous amount of CPU infrastructure. And every customer conversation is telling us that this build-out is just beginning. So based on what we're seeing today, and we're going to talk more about how agentic AI is evolving with CPUs, we now expect the server CPU market to grow by over 50% to over 200 billion by 2030. So that's starting from today, a $25 billion market going to over 200 billion. So there's a lot of excitement about CPUs as well. Now, probably one of the things that is differentiating AMD in how we think about the market is this is not just a data center opportunity. As AI becomes a larger part of our daily lives, we want the intelligence to run right where the work happens. And that means cloud is super important, but the devices that we use every day are going to be extremely important. And that means that we're going to do a lot more at the edge as well with autonomous machines that sense and act in real time. And we really believe that you need AI to be infused everywhere. And that's exactly what we're focused on at AMD. So putting all of that together, we actually expect that the market for our high-performance and adaptive computing products to grow at roughly a 40% CAGR over the next several years, approaching a $2 trillion market by 2030. And frankly, the only way you're going to be able to service a market like that is for us to work together as an ecosystem. There's no one company that can solve it all, but this is the opportunity to bring the best and brightest together. And we have never been in a better position to lead. We have the broadest product portfolio. We have the strongest roadmaps we've ever had. And the thing that I'm most proud of is we have the deepest partnerships with the companies that are building this future. So a little bit about our strategy. Look, I think we've been very consistent. We've talked about our multi-year strategy, and it's really built around 3 priorities. The first is just compute leadership. We're building the broadest set of compute engines in the industry so that we have the right compute for the right workload. Second It's going to be about open platforms. We want everyone to come together in an open ecosystem. We believe an open ecosystem is essential to the future of AI, and that's how we get the force multiplier of everyone coming together. And that's open on hardware, in terms of hardware standards, as well as open on software. And that's why we're investing so heavily in our ROCm software. And you're going to see that AI has been a tremendous multiplier in this rate and pace of progress that we're making in ROCm and in software. And it really means that if we put all of this together, we can have our customers deploy on AMD hardware faster than ever. And the third piece is we're going to get a chance to talk to you about powering AI everywhere. So that's AI in enterprise, that's AI at the PC, that's AI in the physical world. And that's adding new capabilities across all of our products. So today, you're going to see all of that in action. We're going to start with compute for the agentic era. I'm going to show you a lot of hardware. And then we're going to talk about some software and then our overall products from a platform standpoint. And we're honored to have some really special guests that are going to join us to really help bring the technology to life. So let's start with the data center. Today, AMD EPYC runs on the most important workloads in the world. We power the largest cloud providers. We power the digital platforms that billions of people use every day, and the most important critical systems that are used by the largest businesses, including more than 60% of the Fortune 100 are using AMD EPYC. And that momentum is just building. Last quarter, we reached a record 46% revenue share in the server market, and we're continuing to see every major customer move more workloads to EPYC. And on the GPU side, our Instinct adoption has also accelerated. We have a broad set of customers across the largest AI labs, cloud providers, leading AI startups, as well as some of the national labs and sovereign AI opportunities are being built on AMD Instinct, and we really appreciate that opportunity. Now, AI compute's becoming a lot more complicated. And what we're seeing with frontier AI is it's really raising the bar for what infrastructure needs to do. It takes more than a single chip or a single server. You actually have to design the entire rack as one system. And that requires leading CPUs, that requires leading GPUs, that requires high-speed networking that connects everything inside the rack and across the data center. And just as importantly, this is about making these systems super easy to use. And so they need to be easy to deploy, easy to service, and very reliable. And that is exactly what we built with Helios. So today, I'm super excited to launch Helios, the industry's highest performance AI rack. Now, Helios is built to train and run the most demanding frontier models in the world at massive scale. And I have a lot of show and tell for you. So for those of you who know me, you know that I love holding up chips. I call myself sometimes the Vanna White of chips. But it turns out with Helios, there are lots and lots of components. And so you can see these are the chips inside the Helios rack. These are the Instinct. Thank you. So this is Instinct, EPYC, and then the Pensando chips for networking that are inside each rack. And every one of these chips is part of the system. So MI455 is the engine. It's the highest performance GPU in the industry. Venice, which drives it, is the world's fastest CPU cores. And Pensando DPUs and NICs actually connect them with leadership programmability and scale-out bandwidth. So I have a few more props to show you. Let's kind of take a look at how these things fit into the overall system. So first, this is now the MI455 accelerator, which is mounted on what we call an Enhanced Accelerator Module, or EAM. It's a production module that goes into Helios, and it is much more than the GPU package. The EAM actually integrates the GPU, memory, power delivery, high-speed interfaces, system management, cold plates for liquid cooling, all into one compact, serviceable module. Pretty cool, right? Now, if I just give you some of the specs, we're talking about 320 billion transistors. This is built with TSMC's leading 2 nanometer and 3 nanometer process technology. And most importantly, it brings together nearly a decade of AMD chiplet innovation. So it allows us to combine 12 compute and I/O chiplets with 432 gigabytes of memory, all connected by leading industry 3D chip stack packaging. And I can say for sure, it's the highest performance AI accelerator in the industry. Okay, so this is a CPU board that's inside the Helios compute tray, and I'm going to talk a lot about CPUs later, but just to give you a high-level view, it's high-speed 96-core EPYC processor, DDR5 memory, all the I/O that's needed to feed the GPUs, all in a single motherboard. And we also have our Selena DPU. This is a critical part of the networking infrastructure, and it really allows us to deliver both front end as well as the scale out and scale across, bandwidth overall. And this is our Vulcano AI NIC, and you can see, this actually allows us to really have up to 6 Vulcano NICs on a board, and it uses the Open Ultra Ethernet standard. So each Helios compute tray includes 2 of these Vulcano boards, and that allows us to have the scale out and scale up networking overall. So you put all that inside the rack, and we have an additional 6 dedicated networking trays that handle the scale up networking. And those are all connecting 75 GPUs together with UA-Link over Ethernet with silicon from our partners. And that's what we mean by an open ecosystem. So when you bring this all together, I want to say Helios is simply the best AI rack in the world. Now, let's take a look at some numbers. Clearly, it's a very competitive world out there. So when you compare Helios to the competition, we're delivering 15% more compute, 50% more HBM4 memory capacity and memory bandwidth, and 50% more scale-out bandwidth. And what that means is that every Helios can deliver more performance for the largest models, more capacity for longer context, and the bandwidth to scale across thousands of racks. And now we can kind of come over here and take a look at another very large piece of hardware. This is now the production hardware that customers are deploying, and you can see more of that as you go through the exhibit center. And each one of these weighs more than 160 pounds and stands less than 2 inches tall. That's just an extraordinary amount of technology when you look at what's in one of these trays. And when you bring these things together, the numbers are just incredible. More than 18,000 CDNA5 GPU compute units, over 4,600 Zen 6 CPU cores, and 31 terabytes of HBM4 memory, all in a single rack. That's what it takes to run agentic AI at scale. So, today, I'm excited to announce that Helios is in full production. We have shipments on track to start at the end of the 3rd quarter and ramping into the 4th quarter and the second half of the year. And I can tell you, customer demand for Helios is extremely strong. And we're extremely proud of the work that we have done across the leading AI labs to adopt Helios.